ZA Sports. It's in the game.
What's up, y'all, and welcome to episode 3 of the ZA Sports Show. I'm excited to be posting daily, like I promised. I did miss one day, but that's because I went back to work, and I apologize for that. Today, I have a good one for you, and with the first 3 rounds of the NFL Draft officially done, I have for you the 5 biggest steals of the NFL Draft and the 5 biggest busts of the NFL Draft. We'll start with number 1. Number 1, the biggest steal in the NFL Draft so far is Dallas Turner at pick 17. Now, it may sound biased because I'm an Alabama fan, but it's not. Trust me. If you ask any NFL scout, I'm sure they had him high on their boards. This year just happened to be very offensive oriented during the draft. But Dallas Turner is a top edge rusher in the draft. Personally, I saw him play in person, and every sack, every tackle for loss, every disrupted play, whatever it was, you see number 15 Dallas Turner in the backfield. I had him going 8 overall in my mock draft, and he dropped to 17 to the Minnesota Vikings. So good for them. J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner could be like this year's C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson, or it could not work out. But I have Dallas Turner at number 1, and I have him as the top edge rusher in the draft. And this is bold, but he will win Defensive Rookie of the Year, proving why he should have been a top 10 pick. All right, so that's number 1 for biggest steals. Now, we'll start with the biggest bust, or I guess candidate for the biggest bust in the draft, and that is Bo Nix. He was drafted 12th overall by the Broncos, who were just desperate for a quarterback at this point, with 5 of them already off the board. Bo Nix, I had him going in round 2. I do not think he's a first-round quarterback. I don't think he's going to be a day 1 starter, but that's where they're going to use him as. He played in the SEC for 3 years at Auburn. Did absolutely nothing. Did not even reach 3,000 passing yards in any single season. Pretty much barely had a winning record, and it just wasn't great. So he ran away to the Pac-12. And the Pac-12 is known for not really having any defense. And even then, obviously he excelled. He had like 4,000 yards in his first year there at Oregon, and then he had his like 5,000 in the second year. But you know who he never beat? Washington. He didn't even beat the biggest rival. So in the big games, he didn't do anything. It just shows that he fed off of short throws on bad defenses. And I just think that the Broncos were so desperate that they just had to take him. And honestly, they missed out because they could have had someone like Dallas Turner, or really anybody for that matter, that was not a quarterback, because that's not what they needed. They could have even traded back and probably still got Bo Nix, because I don't think anybody else was looking at him in that regard in terms of a top 15 pick. And this was actually the most quarterbacks drafted in the top 15 ever in the NFL draft, with 6. Number 2 for biggest steals in the NFL draft, we're going to go with Cooper DeJean going to pick 40 to the Eagles. He was projected to be a first-round pick and ranked as the number 3 corner in this draft. He's a top guy. He can play safety or corner. He didn't allow that many touchdowns. He had great pass coverage. And this is a guy that's going to be a cornerstone of our franchise for the next 10 years. And letting him go to the Eagles like that, which they did trade up for him, was a mistake for the rest of the NFL. And I think they're going to regret it very, very, very quickly. Number 2 for biggest bust, I actually do have J.J. McCarthy up there. I think he was a merchant of the Jim Harbaugh system. Blake Corum carried him to that championship. So did the defense. You can look at the tape. Stats don't tell the whole story. Alabama was beating them until they started running the ball, defending the outside run, which Alabama was not able to do last year. If you look, that's what they did in all the big games, just ran the ball because JJ is not a great passer. And I don't think that he was worth the 10th pick in the draft. I'm surprised that he was even being considered to go top 5. That doesn't make any sense to me. This year's quarterbacks are really, really weird. I'm pretty sure that NFL GMs are not thinking straight in terms of drafting quarterbacks this year. And so for the third biggest steal of the draft, we're going to go with Adonai Mitchell out of Texas. I've seen this kid play against one of the greatest secondaries, that being Alabama. And he torched us. He went for about over 100 yards, including a couple deep balls. He's got the speed. He's got the strength. He can go for the jump ball. I just don't understand how he fell to the Colts and got drafted. I believe it was 56 when almost every mock draft I had and everybody else had him going round 1. And he dropped to round 2. Lad McConkey went before he did. And Keon Coleman went before he did. That's just insane. I really thought the Bills were going to take him right there at 33, or even the Panthers when they traded up to 32. I don't know how he fell so far, but the Colts got a good one. And him and Michael Pittman are going to light up the league for sure. Third biggest bust of the draft, we're going to go with, I'll say Michael Penix. Not because he's going to be a bust, which he won't be. And there's a common theme here, obviously, quarterbacks. I don't think he's going to be a bust. I think it's just the fact that they drafted him at 8 when they shouldn't have, and that's what makes him a bust. It's just that they won't use him for like 3-4 years, and they could have easily gotten a defensive player. They could have gotten another offensive player. They could have gotten an offensive lineman. Literally anything that could have helped their team. Literally all this does is set them up for the future, maybe in 4 years. You don't use a top 10 pick on somebody that you're going to use in 4 years. And the entire internet agrees with me on this. They are all torching the Falcons for their 8th overall pick, being a quarterback. But that's okay. We'll see how it goes, but I know Kirk Cousins is not happy right now. And honestly, if I'm Michael Penix, I'm not happy either, because what the heck? I just worked my butt off just to be a backup for 4 years? No, thank you. I'd rather drop to the 20s and start than be a backup out of right out of college. So number 4 for biggest steals, we're gonna go with Kool-Aid McKinstry. This was a guy who was supposed to go first round. He was ranked among the top 5 in cornerbacks. He actually was projected a first round pick ever since he was a freshman. I don't know what happened this year. I don't know how he fell 41 to the Saints, but him, Tyrann Mathieu, and Chase Young are going to bring the Saints back to a top 10 defense, I believe, that they used to have. And honestly, he should have gone at around 25. I think that the Packers should have taken him. Terry Arnold did deserve to go before him because he is better than him. But yeah, I think Kool-Aid should not have even dropped out of the 20s. I'm not sure how he went 41. So that brings us to our 4th biggest bust of the draft so far. And honestly, for that one, we're going to go with Trey Benson at pick 66 from the Cardinals. That being that he was about the 4th best running back in the draft, and I don't think the Cardinals exactly need someone like him. They are trying to build their offense, but I really don't think that he was worth a 2nd round pick or a 3rd round pick like that, an early 3rd round pick, when there were still other guys on the board. We'll see how it works out for them, but there's just so many other positions of need that they had to address, and they didn't. And so maybe him being a bust will not be on them, but more. I mean, will not be on him, but more on them as a team, because I don't think they're going to be able to develop him. I mean, you see what they did with David Johnson. They traded him. I mean, James Conner, had an off year when they gave him that extension. So I mean, I think Arizona is the place where skill players go to die, essentially, like DeAndre Hopkins, who was having a rough time there, but then revitalized his career with the Titans. And our fifth and final steal of the draft, we're going to go with Roman Wilson, going in the third round. A lot of people had him at around wide receiver 10 of the draft, and he should have gone early round 2. I had him right behind Ladd McConkey on my draft board, and Ladd McConkey went 34th overall. And so I'm not sure how Roman Wilson fell to the 80s. You could see how the impact he had in that Michigan offense. Honestly, I really wanted the Chargers to get him just to have him in Harbaugh's system because I think he would succeed. But it does. I mean, it works out in the end because he ended up on the Steelers, and they needed a replacement for Deontay Johnson, and so they're usually pretty good at developing receivers. So good for him and good for them, and that's why he is my number 5 steal of the draft. And we have the 5th bust of the draft, and that is going to be Jordan Morgan, the Packers offensive lineman pick. And that's because, again, another knock on the actual team picking him. They did not need to take an offensive lineman at 25. Personally, I think they should have traded back and then taken an offensive lineman in the second round. This was another desperate pick. And Jordan Morgan was probably the 5th or 6th ranked offensive tackle. Don't think he should have went round 1. I think he should have been a second round pick. And so I think the Packers are going to regret it. Especially the players that went after him that they could have used. Xavier Worthy going 3 picks after that as well when they really, really needed a wide receiver. And Xavier Worthy is supposed to be the next Tyreek Hill. So that's my 5 biggest steals and 5 biggest busts of the draft. Agree or disagree, that's all right. Let me know in the comments what you think. And thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for the next video.